Good morning. This is the time and place for the Planning Hearing Officer for March 22nd, 2023. My name is Dennis Joe. I will be conducting the hearing as hearing officer. Please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones at this time. The Planning Hearing Officer is being broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable, Channel 6, and AT&T Uverse, Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed live in high definition on the city's webpage, glendaleca.gov/live, on youtube.com/myglendale, and Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Hearings are also archived on the city's website for viewing anytime at glendaleca.gov/agendas. For public comments and questions during the hearing, please call 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. Record of decisions for all projects will be posted online on the Planning Division's website. Please note that any appeal of the case heard today must be filed within 15 days of on the decision date. The appeal may be submitted online at glendalepermits.com. Hearing procedures. The hearing will proceed as follows. I will read the description of the applicant's request. I will read the reports received from other city departments and other letters, communications from interested parties. The case planner will make a brief overview of the case, give an analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will be asked to come forward, stating both the name and address, and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in support or in opposition to the application and interested parties will be asked to come forward to speak, again, clearly stating both their name and address within a 3-minute time limit. Lastly, the applicant will be given an opportunity to make a closing comment if desired in response to testimonies given by preceding speakers with a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will be closed and the case will be taken into submission. Findings. If the evidence presented in the application at the hearing meets the required findings set forth in the municipal code, then the project can be either approved or approved with conditions. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request can or will be denied. Decisions. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in a form of a letter sent to the applicant and all persons who respond to the public notice, either by speaking at this hearing or submitting written responses and have provided their name and mailing address. The date of the decision will be on the date appearing on the letter. Appeals. Under appeals provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of the decision. Anyone wishing to appeal may do so online at glendalepermits.com or may obtain forms and brochures on the procedures form from the Building and Safety's Permit Services Center located on 633 East Broadway on the first floor. Public notice. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by using public notices that were mailed to the property owners located within 500 feet of the subject property, physically posted on the site in question, and placed in the local newspaper. Speaker cards. If you wish to speak, please write your name and address on one of the speaker forms which are provided at the rear of this room. And I would also like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of the Planning Hearing Officer hearings are recorded as part of public record. On to the case hearing, we have one scheduled case today, which is variance case number PVAR 2118481 and administrative exception case number 000852-2023. The applicant is requesting a standards and administrative exception to construct a 3,430 square foot, 3-story single-family home with an attached 2-car garage on a 10,471 square foot vacant hillside property in the R1R Floor Area District 2 zone without providing the required 15-foot street front setback, which is the variance request, an 18-foot driveway length, which is part of the administrative request, or administrative exception request, where a 20-foot, and also, I'm sorry, a 20-foot garage depth, which is part of the administrative exception request. Moving on to interdepartmental communications of notes and comments received regarding this project. I see comments provided by our Glendale Water and Power and Electrical, which are standard comments to be resolved during plan check and have general code provisions. From our Public Works Engineering, more of the common routine comments to be resolved during plan check. I do see something from our traffic division, which they're commenting one on-street parking shall be prohibited across the street from the proposed driveway for operational access. And then additionally, parked vehicles on the proposed driveway shall not extend into the travel way, which is, I believe, the right-of-way. And I do have standard comments from our Building and Safety Division. I do believe we did have one communication letter from the public that was forwarded on to me. If you give me a moment here while I pull up my email from I apologize for the delay. From a Dr. Hank Schlinger and Miss Juliet Riggett. I apologize if I mispronounced her names. They have concerns about the project. They oppose the construction, not conforming with the project. And they have some concerns, or significant concerns, with the look and the charm of the neighborhood. I don't have any other public inputs received. For the next part, I would like to call in the case planner to do a presentation.
Thank you, and good morning, hearing officer and members of the public. I'm Cassandra Pruitt. I'm the case planner for the project, as described by the hearing officer. The subject site is located in West Glendale at the southerly terminus of Glen Eyre Drive. The lot fronts Glen Eyre Drive at the top and Kempton Road at the bottom. The property features a 10,471 square foot vacant lot on a steep hillside. The average slope is about 69%. The site is located in the R1R-2 zone, which means it's the restricted residential zone with floor area ratio District 2. And what that means is that the zoning requires a 15-foot setback facing each street, a 10-foot setback on the sides, and a maximum total floor area of 3,037 square feet. A new single-family home is exempt from review under the California Environmental Quality Act, and there are no protected indigenous trees located on the site. 2 oak trees are located to the west of the site, about 20 feet away, as indicated at the lower left of this slide. The site also features 2 easements, indicated by these red polygons here, and they're a storm and a sewer easement, and no construction can occur over those easements. Compared to other lots on the street, the subject site is shallower than any other on the street, since it is just over 60 feet deep at its narrowest point for approximately an 80-foot length. This results in a smaller buildable area, and because of the easements to the west, the 2 15-foot street front setbacks and the 10-foot setback at the side, the resulting buildable area is just 1,340 square feet. Another feature of this site that impacts the development is that Glen Drive has a narrow street width. Like other properties on the street, on-street parking will now be prohibited directly across the proposed driveway, which is located here on the slide, to ensure that vehicles can pass. However, the subject property still needs to have enough room to accommodate a vehicle temporarily while that vehicle is entering or exiting the site, and without that vehicle extending into the street and obstructing traffic. In this case, there is a measuring 3 feet to 5 foot wide area that's the public right-of-way that's outside of the roadway that helps to provide some area for a car to enter and exit the subject site, even if it has a shortened driveway. A further constraint in terms of the driveway is that the site slopes from east to west, in addition to sloping north to south. So the driveway, as shown on the left of this slide, has different slopes at different points along the driveway. So it's sloping down at one point, level at another point, sloping up at another point. This results in less flexibility to design the driveway to comply with the maximum required slope standards, and it diminishes the ability to slope the driveway down even further to push the building into the hillside in compliance with the design standards. To the north of the site, which is toward the top of this slide, Glen Drive features one-story homes. To the south, below Kempton, is homes that have two-story volumes. To the east, there's homes with three-story volumes. And to the west of the site is a vacant lot, and beyond that, a two-story home. As a note, there are 2 other properties on Glen Drive right here that have non-conforming front setbacks. 429 Glen at the end of the road has a 9'6" front setback, and 407 Glen a couple houses down, has an 8-foot front setback, and both of those were approved through variances. The proposal under consideration is to build a 3-story, 3,430 square foot house, which includes a 503 square foot attached garage. 500 square feet of the garage is exempt from the floor area ratio calculation. The project proposal includes providing it, as the hearing officer mentioned, a 10-foot front setback instead of a 15-foot front setback, a 15-foot driveway length instead of an 18-foot driveway length, and an 18-foot garage depth instead of a 20-foot garage depth. The house appears as a 1-story as viewed from Glen Drive, which can be seen on the top right corner of the slide, and as viewed from Kempton Road, it appears as a 3-story volume. The middle image on this slide is a good reference image for the issues the site has in complying with the development standards. On one hand, the front setback standard and the minimum driveway length and garage depth require the building to be pushed away from Glen as shown on the left red arrow. On the other hand, Glendale's comprehensive design guidelines call for the building to be pushed into the hillside and to step with the topography. The project is not able to comply with both of those standards without resulting in a while still resulting in a functional building design. In terms of the site plan, the building is placed within the resulting buildable area, taking into account the easements and the setbacks. I'll quickly run through the building plans to describe general layout of the project. This is the roof plan, and it helps illustrate how the top level, indicated in the red dashed lines, is set back from the street between 13 feet to 15 feet at the top level, and then the lower level, indicated by this solid polygon, that has the 10-foot setback. The decks around the building that extend out provide some outdoor space, since there's no yard space on this steep hillside site, and no grading has been proposed to create yard space, which is in compliance with the hillside design guidelines. Fire department access stairs are located at the top right, and those are on grade and they comply with the setback standards. The building is accessed from the 3rd and top level that is adjacent to Glen Drive. The part of the building at the driveway entrance actually meets the 15-foot required setback. The rest of the facade ranges between about 13 feet to about 14 feet. The garage and entryway areas have been designed to maximize facade stepping in compliance with the design guidelines. and to maximize efficiency of floor area use. The second floor features a small deck area, which has been minimized in size to not wrap the entire building in order to comply with the design guidelines. The first floor is similarly designed with reduced deck sizes and modest bedroom sizes. While this is not a review of the project's compliance with the design guidelines, what this shows is that the project's design is constrained and the locations and size of floor area are minimized to achieve the requirements of the design guidelines. So there isn't a lot of available area to remove in order to get the building to meet the setback and driveway standards. These elevations show how the building steps with the topography in compliance with the design guidelines. However, the stepping is already somewhat minimal. So if the garage were pushed out an additional 2 feet, to meet the minimum required driveway length and garage depth, the building would not have meaningful stepping in the area as visible from the west and east elevations, and it would not comply with the design guidelines. This section helps demonstrate the 13 to 15 foot setback at the top level and the 10-foot setback at the lower levels. The floor to ceiling heights have been reduced on the top 2 levels and a vaulted ceiling used in the garage area in order to minimize building height. The variance request is for a 10-foot front setback on Glen Eyre instead of the required 15-foot front setback. And I will now run through the required findings of fact for a variance and summarize how the project demonstrates that they meet those. The first required finding of fact is that the strict application of the provisions of any such ordinance would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance. Due to the numerous constraints on this site that I've outlined in this presentation, to require the project to comply with the required setback distance off of Glen Eyre Drive would result in the building sticking out of the hillside and not complying with the design guidelines, which call for it to be pushed into the hillside and to step with the topography. If the building were to comply with both standards, it would become so narrow it wouldn't be practicable to occupy. The second finding of fact is that there are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property that do not apply generally to other property in the neighborhood. The site has several exceptional circumstances not applicable to others in the neighborhood, including the shallow lot, 2 easements prohibiting any construction over them, having a steep slope of 69% that's not common to other lots on the street, and in combination with the 2 street front setbacks, having just a 31-foot deep potential building pad. The third finding of fact is that the granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such zone or neighborhood in which the property is located. This finding can be met because the proposal is consistent with the street pattern and the street-facing level nearly complies with the front setback standard since it has a 15-foot setback at the garage door and a 13 to 14-foot approximate setback at the other areas of the facade. The fourth and final required finding of fact is that the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance. The objectives of the ordinance are to protect the character of the neighborhood and ensure sensible development by ensuring setbacks respect the neighborhood character, including placement and rhythm, and that provision of landscaped open spaces provided along the street. The proposal achieves these objectives and is consistent with the street pattern. The 2 administrative exception requests are for a minor variance in dimensions required for the driveway length and garage depth. Specifically, again, a 15-foot long driveway instead of an 18-foot long driveway, and an 18-foot long garage depth instead of a 20-foot garage depth. So I'll now run through the required findings of fact for an administrative exception and summarize how the project demonstrates them. The first required finding of fact is that the granting of the exception will result in design improvements or there are space restrictions on the site which preclude full compliance with code requirements without hardship. The design improvement is that the building will be able to comply with the design guidelines, since without the exception it would not be able to comply. The second required finding of fact is that the granting of the exception with any conditions imposed will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such zone or neighborhood in which the property is located. This finding can be met because the project has been carefully designed to minimize any negative result from not complying with the standards. The driveway has been designed to incorporate a 3 to 5 foot area of the public right-of-way that is outside of the roadway, and which results in the equivalent of an 18-foot long driveway, which ensures sufficient access to and egress from the garage. The project is also at the end of a dead-end street with minimal traffic, which minimizes potential conflicts with other vehicles. Additionally, an 18-foot garage depth is sufficient to accommodate a vehicle, as evidenced by the fact that the zoning code allows this depth of garage by right under certain circumstances. Finally, Public Works will require removal of street parking adjacent to the driveway, which is consistent with other driveways on the street, and which will ensure sufficient roadway width. The third required finding of fact is that the granting of the exception will not be contrary to the objectives of the applicable regulations. This finding can be met because the project will achieve the objectives of the ordinance to provide sufficient off-street parking with functional access to and egress from that parking. In conclusion, the requested variance and exceptions are sensible and afford the owner a fair opportunity in developing a vacant property similar to other residences in the immediate vicinity. As a note, one public comment was received regarding the project and was shared with the hearing officer. He summarized it earlier. The letter is from a neighbor who lives 1.5 miles away from the site and who opposes construction that doesn't comply with the standards or significantly changes the look and charm of the neighborhood. As I believe has been shown in this presentation, the proposal is consistent with the neighborhood pattern and the requests for relief from code standards are reasonable. Based on the information just presented, the staff recommendation is to approve with conditions, with the 6 conditions as described in the staff report and shown on this slide. 2 of the conditions are to restrict street parking adjacent to the driveway and to not build over the easements. And the remaining 4 are standard conditions of approval generally placed on all projects. That concludes my overview of the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pruitt. I don't have any questions at the moment. Now I'd like to call up our first speaker, which is going to be the applicant, which is Mr. Von Trammell. May I ask you to call you up to the podium? You got 15 minutes to speak. Please state your name and your address. Yeah, let's give your quick presentation.
My name is Von Trammell. Address is 1912 Benicia Avenue, Los Angeles, California, 90025.
And go ahead, if you have anything to speak, do you have a presentation?
Just, thank you for all the work Glendale staff has done. My presentation will be a little bit repetitive, so I apologize for that, but I did it. So we are requesting the variance to reduce the street setback from 10 feet, from 15 feet to 10 feet. The administrative exception to allow a 15-foot driveway instead of 18, and a 18-foot garage depth instead of a 20-foot depth. The property is located on the northwesterly side of Brockman Canyon at 410 Glen Drive. The project site is 10,471 square feet, south-facing, downsloping through lot bounded by Glen Drive on the north and Kempton Road on the south. It's a steep lot. The average slope is 69%, which is equivalent to a vertical drop of 12 inches for every 18 inches of run. These are some views of the site looking east up Kempton Road and west down Kempton Road. You can see the 2 easements that run through the property, a 6-foot wide storm drain easement near the middle of the lot and a 15-foot wide sewer easement in the westerly third of the property. These are views from Glen Drive looking west and east down towards Kempton. The strict application of the provisions of the code would result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the general purpose and intent of the ordinance. The proposed house is planned to be a 3,430 square foot, 3-story, single-family residence with an attached 2-car garage. This slide shows a schematic site plan of the house if it were to comply with the required 15-foot R1R zoning street setback, an 18-foot driveway, and a 20-foot deep garage. Though it might comply with the height requirements, the house would sit out over the slope, giving the appearance of looming over adjacent downslope properties. A house with a 15-foot setback under these circumstances would not comply with the hillside design guidelines that specifically recommend new houses be terraced to reflect the topography and slope of the site. It also encourages building into the hillside to diminish visual impact of mass and scale, even if significant grading is required. This slide shows the site plan with the juxtaposition of a house with a setback of 15 feet, and that's the black dashed line, and the proposed house shown in colored blue and green with a 10-foot setback. The requested 10-foot setback will help the house comply with the hillside design guidelines. This reduced setback would allow the house to be tucked into the hill an additional 5 feet, reducing the mass and scale, and allow for terracing of the house as recommended by the guidelines. There we go. The 10-foot setback would reduce the visual impact of the house, pulling it farther away from the slope and into the hill, and allow terracing of the building. Aside from the visual impact of new houses, the hillside design guidelines also state that prevailing setbacks of buildings on the street be considered, as well as code requirements. There are 2 houses on Glen Eyre which have received past variances for reduced street setbacks, number 429 and number 407. A walk around the neighborhood shows that within 500 feet of the house, 6 houses have portions that are closer than 11 feet to the street, and a bit further away in the neighborhood, there are an additional 12 houses. This slide summarizes the houses that are closer to the street than 12 feet These dimensions were obtained using a laser measuring device held at the curb, measuring horizontally to the house. Finding of facts B. There are exceptional circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved or to the intended use or development of the property that do not apply generally to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. Again, though the site is 10,471 square feet in size, there are 2 easements that cross the property from Glen Eyre Drive down to Kempton Road, a storm drain easement and a sewer easement. These easements prohibit building on the westerly side of the lot. The steep slope limits where the garage can be placed. Measuring 38 feet off of Glen Eyre for an 18-foot driveway and a 20-foot deep garage, the back edge of the garage would be 23 feet above the existing grade. Though it might be possible to get the building to comply with the height requirements, it would not comply with the hillside design guidelines for reduced mass, scale, and terracing of the house. These 2 easements plus the building height limits reduce the available building area to only 1,340 square feet. The easement, steep topography, and limited building pad result in exceptional circumstances that do not apply to other property in the same zone or neighborhood. Findings of fact C. Granting of the variance would not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such zone or neighborhood in which the property is located. In general, the intent of the front setback requirement is to maintain an attractive neighborhood with consistent streetscape and rhythm, adding visual relief to the street. This requirement is critical in more typical housing arrangements where homes are aligned next to each other and address the street in the same way in a repeating pattern. This hillside neighborhood does not have the same consistent rhythmic pattern of house placement. By granting the reduced setback, the proposed house would be spatially and visually consistent with the neighborhood homes, which have varying street setbacks, often less than the 15-foot code requirement. To avoid the appearance of the building looming over the downslope of the subject site, the requested street setback reduction, the shorter driveway and shallower garage will allow the building pad to be located closer to Glen Eyre and be cut further into the hillside. The reduced setback will primarily apply to the 2 lower floors, which will be cut into the hillside. The upper floor will be set back from the street 15 feet at the garage door and 13 feet 4 inches at the entry. As seen from Glen Eyre Drive, the house will appear to be 13 to 15 feet set back from the street. From Kempton Road, the house will terrace with the slope to reduce the scale and the mass. Therefore, the reduced setback will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such zone or neighborhood in which the property is located. This is the south elevation and the east elevation, and the house is seen from Glen Eyre. Finding of facts D, the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance. The objective of the zoning code is to protect the character of the neighborhood and ensure sensible development. The objective of the street front setback requirement is to ensure that the setbacks of buildings from street respect the existing or preferred neighborhood character, maintain an attractive rhythm and streetscape, and provide landscape open space along the street. Approval of the reduced street front setback will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance due to the space between the house and the street being similar to others in the neighborhood. Approval of the reduced driveway length and reduced garage depth will result in design improvements allowing the building to better comply with the hillside design guidelines. The driveway will be a sufficient length to allow for a vehicle to park without interfering with traffic flow or pedestrians, and the shallower garage will provide sufficient enclosed coverage for vehicles. These requests are sensible and afford the property owner a fair opportunity in developing a vacant property as other residences in the immediate vicinity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trammell. I do have some questions, if I may.
Sure.
I can tell this is a very challenging site. It has a very steep slope. And I understand why you're requesting a setback for the building as to go as close as 10 feet. I do understand that. And I can see that being developed throughout the up and down the street. So the upper floor levels will be set back. I think the garage would be set back 15 feet, but then portions of the podium of the floors down below will act part as the driveway. But the levels 2 and 3 down below would be, which you would see from Glen Eyre, would be encroaching into the 15-foot setback. So I can understand why we're doing that. I wanted to ask about the garage. So we're talking about the AE, which is going to be the driveway, because I know that's very tight for the driveway for being 18 feet. And I know you're asking for a reduced depth of the garage. One of the common comments that we hear at design review from the design review board when we talk about mass and scale, whenever there's a hillside is as complex as this one, we got an extremely 67 plus. I can see that the floor to ceiling heights on the floor below are 10 feet. And one of the common things that we always talk about, pushing the building further into there. Have there been any thoughts? I want to get your thoughts on if we just allow me to I know you put a lot of thought into it, and I've kind of looked at this within recent days, and that's why this is part of an open discussion. So just allow me to kind of talk about some of the things, and I want to ask for further clarification. Okay. Of reducing some of the floor to ceiling heights, because 10, I get it, it's very nice, but it can be really large. And part of the findings review is the hillside design guide policy. And we're just talking about methods of reducing, and I just kind of want to get your thoughts and some of your analysis here. If we were to, because I can see if we were to, because we're, as we pinch it in closer to the street, we're forcing the building to go up higher. And I just wanted to gain thoughts if we were to lower, let's say we take a foot or two, and we'll talk about, and I'm even thinking about angles here for the driveway. And I just want to get your thoughts here. If we can get the most compliance out of the code, and specifically I'm just thinking about, and I understand the driveway and the setback, for the interior garage length, the depth being 20, I can see that there's balconies there, and I know the building wall, all levels are in column, and I understand that's from an engineering standpoint. If we were to push the building down, whether it be a foot, 2 foot, then we can get more length and get the same perceived mass from Kempton Road down below. And I understand as you push the second floor, finished floor, or the finished floor of the first level, whatever you want to call it, from Glen Air, and if you were to push that down, that creates a lower slope or a steeper slope of the driveway. So I guess maybe we can kind of talk about if we were to theoretically push the building down maybe a foot or two, and I know the more aggressive you go, going 2 feet, I mean, it's this tall, which can be a lot on this slope. If we go down a foot or whatever, is it still achievable if we get subtle downslope of the driveway and try to achieve the most out of the garage depth? And I hope I made some sense here. If we push the building down, that would help with the hillside design guidelines as far as mass. And I understand the footprint would expand because we're going to give more length in the driveway. I'm sorry, the garage length. Is that something that we can do?
Well, we have looked at keeping the garage floor down as low as possible. But given with a 15-foot driveway and the transition requirements,
Yes.
the most we could come down, I believe, which is in one of my slides, was a little over a foot. And at that point, that puts the garage elevation just below, if the street elevation is at 86, we would be down about 85. And so then kind of working back from that, allowing for sufficient structure of a garage, say up to the roof, 10 feet, maybe it could be 9 feet with an 8-foot ceiling in the garage or something like that. And then working down from the maximum heights, we still are right there at the 32 or 35 foot building height. And the farther, if the garage were deeper, the part of the garage would cantilever out beyond that height limit. We would be exceeding the building height, if that makes sense. I can show.
I know we're doing it in play, and I talk about, and that's why I was mentioning, I know if you make it narrow, it pushes it up, but if you push it down because of the terrain, the further of the projection, because that follows the natural steep contour. I get that. Is there anything there that we can try to get the most achievement? That's what I'm trying to say. Because from my experience with the design review board, they always talk about mass and scale, about what's perceived down below. I mean, 10 feet is nice. You know what I mean? And they're going to say, hey, is there anything we can give? And as far as my role as a hearing officer, I would like to achieve as much as possible, because we do, as identified by the traffic division, parking, is going to be somewhat more of their concern there. And I would love to see if we can get this to ensure to be used as a parking space. I mean, I want to try to see if we can get the most as possible. And I understand there are instances that, the code does allow 18 feet. And that's with a narrow lot when it turns at a 90-degree turn, but we got a straight shot, and I just thought we'd just talk about this to see if there's any flexibility, because I do see, your elevation of the finished floor of the garage is 0.2 feet. So there's very subtle, we're talking about very subtle incline. But we do allow for some subtle downs, and I know that run we're talking about is 15 feet, which I was just wondering if we can drop that down, and if we can push it out to see if there's anywhere we can get that to get more compliance with as far as the depth.
Well, again, we tried, we worked very carefully to get the slopes of the garage the slopes of the driveway so that they would comply with the transition requirements. And even with the maximum driveway slope of 20%, the most it can come down, given the driveway, the short driveway, is just under 2 feet. And that's where that's where it is. Unless the whole building were moved farther away from the street and dropped down. But then we can't drop down enough to compensate for the steepness of the site.
I'm not asking for full compliance.
Yeah.
I'm just curious to see and understand, because it does seem like you're absolutely right. The maximum slope in the R1R or residential zones or hillside areas is 20%, and we do allow for transitions. I do believe, and I'm not looking at the code, it goes 10% and then half of that. So it would go 10%, 5%, or was it 5%, 2.5%? So I do see that at your section cut at A13, I know that's only 1 point of the changing varied contour, because it's going in many different directions. And I don't understand how it happens as you go further away or maybe further east. I'm just trying to see if there's any way that we could get the most out of it and it's going to come up during design review. And they're going to talk about, hey, your head height for each floor is 10 feet. And they're going to say, hey, what type of investigation did we talk about? And part of the hillside design guidelines is going to be part of the hearing officer. We're trying to provide that balance. And that's why I have the discussion. I'm not asking for full compliance. I mean, if we can get the full compliance, that'd be amazing. But I'm just trying to figure out where there is flexibility. And that's why I appreciate you having this dialogue for that. And just to understand where I'm coming from, that's all.
Well, it seems as though the garage is the dictating element here. How are we going to get off the street, and where is it going to be at what elevation? What happens below that? I mean, we could have 9-foot ceilings and 8 foot, and on the second floors, but still the overall height from the roof down to grade is going to be 35 feet with a 3 and 12 roof slope.
You would still comply.
It would, right? But why not? I mean, the building's going to go straight down. Why not take advantage of that height and have slightly higher floors down there?
I'm speaking to just the depth of the garage. So if we lower the floor heights, and that if you could push out the building, and that's why I don't understand. I understand this is one cut on your one sheet, and I don't understand that is, and I just want to get your thoughts. So what I'm talking about is, if you reduce the head height, the floor to ceiling heights on the second floor or wherever it is, it would push the massing down, and then you can provide a subtle, and I understand a 15-foot run is not much, but I'm trying to investigate if there's any opportunities to just get a slightly larger garage, and I just wanted to see if there's any possibility of that, just to see. And I understand it's it's about 20% deviation, or less than that. And I'm just trying to see, because I'm just trying to respond to the comment I heard from whatever. I'm just trying to get the most out of mass and scale. My guess, design review would talk about that. And if I can get, if we can get closest to compliance, that'd be great too. I'm just wanted to kind of go down have that discussion. Is it possible to even subtly drop it just to see if we could? Is there any way we can explore
I
that?
can explore that. I mean, I have explored it. I don't think there is, to get a 20-foot deep garage, it just pushes the building out, and then it doesn't allow for any terracing of the structure below it.
Correct. I know what you're saying, and I'm just looking at this one section on A31, and I understand it varies, and I'm just kind of reiterating that. It does seem like there may be room at that one cut, and I just wanted to have that dialogue. It doesn't seem like, and I don't expect. I just wanted to pick your analysis, what you've done, because I can tell a lot of care has gone into this, and I just want to, as I deliberate on this, I kind of want to investigate that as well too. I'm not asking for full compliance for 20% because I understand a 15-foot run, and if you drop it 2 feet or whatever it is to get that full 20%, it's a lot in that short span. I get it. You know what I mean? And I'm just talking about, hey, if we can achieve the most compliance out of it, that would be great to balance mass and scale, pushing it down. If we can increase the footprint, if that's even possible, and that's all I'm asking, just having that discussion, that's all.
Can I chime in with I just wanted to add in something. So in designing the driveway, I'm not sure what sheet you're looking at, and I'd be happy to pull it up on here if any of the slides had that sheet.
A13? It's a section cut of, it seems like it's going through the garage.
I can pull it up here.
The site plan says A42 and A4 through, section cut 3. Well, let me look at A3, section cut 3 and A13.
Right.
Oh, so this has to be section cut 3.
Okay, so sheet A13, you said?
Yeah.
Is this the one on the
That
slide?
should be it.
Correct.
Okay, so what I wanted to mention is in this slide, you see a relatively flat driveway, but in my presentation, I had shown a slide that basically is demonstrating that the driveway actually slopes down in one part and up in another part. So the driveway is sloping not just from north to south, it's also sloping sideways.
So they're proposing the finished surface to do this.
It's
toward it.
It's a warped driveway because the street is sloping 1 foot, 2 feet within that 16.
Right, so the driveway is sloping in both directions, which makes it very difficult to meet the transition slope requirements. This design, he spent a lot of time adjusting it and readjusting it and readjusting it to get the driveway slopes. It was almost going to be another variance request. So I think, what I was trying to demonstrate on this slide was just that it was already very difficult for it to achieve the transition slope requirements, which shows that there's not a lot of flexibility to change it even further. That's what I wanted to chime in.
So is the proposed slopes at the maximum at 20 and whatever it is? What our code allows?
Well, the transition slopes is the second part that's required, and he's barely meeting the transition slopes.
Okay. I mean, I don't see him on here, and I'd love to see some analysis. I'm not saying yes or no. I just want to grasp my head, and if we could get the most achievable out of the code as far as for the neighborhood, because the code is there for a reason, and I would love to have compliance to the greatest extent, and that's the reason why I'm asking these questions, because I can tell that a lot of care and detail has gone in through it, and that's why I'm bringing it up. So I just wanted to pick the brain here in our short amount of time. I think I can kind of look at this later on when I take this into submission. But thank you so much. I know it's very complex, and I appreciate you in answering my questions. Is there anything else that you would like to just discuss before I call?
There is another sheet that is specifically for the driveway.
Sure.
I think you'd have to keep going. Maybe go back up. No. There's one that has the driveway section cuts, all three of them. I think it's the other way. There. So this is the section at the east side of the driveway. There's a section cut at the center of the driveway and a section cut at
Hold on one second. Let me get there so I can understand what the section cuts means. Just, which sheet are we on, Ms. Pruitt?
A1.1A.
Thank you. So then I just want to see the reference cut so I can get, when you explain this, I want to make sure I fully understand that. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
2, 3, 4. Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. Please continue. I want to get my bearing.
Just saying that we tried to meet the transition requirements and provide safe access from the street to the garage.
I appreciate these sections because I can, in 2D, I can't see, because I just look at the elevations on the street, like the top of curb. I look at the finished floor. I know it's a 2 foot, but with these sections here, and I understood that section I was referencing and focusing on, and that's why I emphasize, I know this is just one point of reference, and I do appreciate you providing the analysis on here. And thank you so much we're flushing this out. That's all. Did you have anything else? It seems like you were done, Mr. Trump.
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to call up the next speaker. It's going to be Mr. Irvin Tarkanian. I hope I got that correctly.
Hello, good morning. My name is Irvin Tarkanian, residing at 400 Glen Air Drive, Glendale, California, 91202. I am the next door neighbor of Phil and Wendy, and just wanted to say that I fully support this project. Seeing these renderings, I believe will add beautifully to the neighborhood. They're investing a lot of their time and money into it. I believe I can invest a little bit of patience for the construction. I myself am a contractor for over 20 years. Did a lot of school projects around here and there, in Glendale, Lincoln Elementary, Vertigo Woodlands, so on and so forth. Just to add to your discussion about the sloping driveway, walking on a 20% slope is a lot different than just looking at it on the paper. So the transitions that you guys were talking about right now are difficult to achieve practically. On paper, it's very easy. But I just wanted to add that into the discussion. And yeah, we fully support the project. Plans look great. Big investment to the community, and much appreciated that they're doing it to not have an empty lot where people can just come and hang out and leave trash behind and that kind of stuff. So that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tarkanian. Yeah. This is the portion where the applicant has a rebuttal. If you have anything else you'd like to add. Oh, we do have a gentleman here with a card. We have two. Well, I'm just glad that we were able to get the opportunity to receive them, so I do appreciate you waving them up in your hands. I'm just going to go in order of when they were waved in the air. So I'm going to call up Mr. Jim Kuzman.
My name is Jim Kussman. I live at 400 Kempton Road, Glendale 91202, directly across the street from this project. I have three things I would like to, I saw in the slide, I think it was number 4, provide adequate street parking. I have no idea where that would be on that street. There's not adequate street parking now, so whatever that means. I didn't see any presentation about landscaping. I'm going to be looking directly across the street at this house. The Kazanjians have done a beautiful job at their house with landscaping that I can see. It's great. I haven't seen anything here that talks about that. And the last thing, sir, the last thing in the world I want to see is this thing pushed closer to Kempton Road for any reason. And I don't want to make it a flat-sided building to look at either. So whatever it takes to keep this look, we need to do. Please do not make them start squishing this thing so that this terraces go away or it moves closer to Kempton. Thank you very much. I support the project.
Thank you, Mr. Koosman. Just wanted to speak about landscaping. During design review, a fully detailed landscape plan will be required. So this is just during the zoning phase as far as to talk about but I do appreciate and thank you very much for your comments. I'm going to call up the next one, Mrs. Patty Dugan. I do hope I got your name correct.
Hi, my name is Patty Dugan. I live at 429 Glen Eyre Drive. We appreciate what they have done. We are actually the only neighbor who is right next and at the end of the cul-de-sac. And so we know that we've worked with Ms. Pruitt and just made sure, and we love the design. We think it's a beautiful, we love how they're putting it into the hill. I think the biggest concern is what you brought up in terms, and what the other gentleman brought up, is parking and access in and out of our street. It is a very, very narrow street. And so the biggest concern is the driveway. Right now, the cars are generally always parked they live next door and they're always in the driveway. And so the garbage trucks coming in, we can't even barely do it right now on our street. Putting out our garbage cans is a problem. It's so tight and narrow. And so that would be the only consideration is that driveway and making sure that we have access in and out, because we're stuck at the end of the cul-de-sac. If anything is blocking it, nobody can get in and out.
Sure.
And so that's the only concern. But I do appreciate, like I said, everything that they have done to minimize the impact of the look of the house, keeping it inside the hill, and that would be the only thing I'd like to add.
Thank you, Ms. Dugan.
Thank you.
I see that we do not have any further speaker cards. Yeah, absolutely. If you approach the podium, please go ahead and state your name and then your address really quick, just for the record.
Sure. Irvin Tarkanian, 400 Glen Eyre Drive, Glendale, California, 91202. Just to address the parking issue, we have 2 carports available for Wendy and Phil if they want to use it for parking, or if any of their construction crew want to use it for parking. It's not a 50-space lot, but we can accommodate 6 to 10 cars there. So if anybody's worried about it, I'm willing to step up and say that Phil and Wendy are more than welcome to use our carports for parking if it's necessary. Okay? So everybody.
Rebuttal that. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead before. No, please approach. Just for the record, once again.
My only rebuttal to that is,
Before-
if you were to move,
Go ahead and
then we
state your
don't
name
have that.
and your address really quick for the record, so that when we do review tapes.
sorry.
Thank you very much, and that's the only reason why.
Yeah, my name is Patty Dugan.
Thank you.
Again, I love the neighborly thing. It's just for the future, and if they weren't living there. Right now, we barely have 3 spots. We're gonna lose another spot, and if they weren't living there or offering that, then we wouldn't have that space available. So just for the future, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dugan. I can really appreciate everybody's comments here. And I do share some of her concerns. And in going through my analysis, asking Mr. Trammell some of these questions, I'm trying to address some of these things I've asked, I've read and heard from the public. And my goal here is to analyze this with a fair a new set of lenses, of eyes, and try to achieve the most out of the code compliance. So I do appreciate everyone's comments. I do appreciate the care and the detail provided within the plan. So thank you so very much for everyone's comments and Mr. Trammell for answering my questions and going over his plans within such a short amount of time. Ms. Cassandra Pruitt, is there any callers do we have?
We do not have any callers at this time.
Thank you. As stated before, this is a very complex site, and I do want to take this project into submission, which, as stated within the proceedings, a decision letter will be provided to anybody who had provided a speaker card, as well as the applicant, or had expressed any interest with Ms. Pruitt. And I'm going to take this case into submission, and this hearing is now closed.